Hey, we're from the St. Croix River Education District. I'm Nick.
And I'm Rye.
And we're talking about just reflective listening when you're doing like a individual check-in with a student. So kind of like before class or after class, or if you run into them in the hallway, or if you sit down and just have lunch with a student, whenever you're going to have like that individual check-in of like, hey, how are things going? Using strategies that are going to make that student feel heard. Because I don't know about you, Rye, I've talked with a bunch of students over the years who tell me like, I really don't connect as well with adults when I feel like they're just waiting for me to finish talking and they're not really listening to me. Like I don't really feel heard.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's hard for them to understand that we actually do relate to them, like, or that we can and have the ability to relate to them.
Yeah, so just part of that is something that we call reflective listening, and it basically looks like after the student finishes telling you something, you use phrases like, "Oh, yeah, it sounds like," or "So what I heard is," and then kind of not repeating like a parrot, but just kind of summarizing what you heard and just saying like, "Hey, did I get that right or no?" And you don't have to do it after absolutely everything the student says. I mean, you don't want to sound like kind of like a therapist robot. That's not what we're really talking about
Or a
here.
parrot.
Yeah, or a parrot. If the student says like, "Hey, I'm going to my uncle's house over the weekend," you don't have to respond with, "Oh, so what I heard is you're going to your uncle's house." No, not like that kind of robotic repetition. Um, it's just like if a student tells you a lot of stuff, or if you just weren't sure exactly what they were trying, like what was the main point of what they were saying. Just using those open-ended, like, hey, this is what I got from that. And then adding that part about, hey, did I get that right or no? And I think even adding that like or no to the end of it is really impactful, because honestly, like a lot of students I talk to, if you just ask, did I get that right? And don't add that, did I get that right or not? They're more likely to just nod their head because they assume you want them to say yes. They're kind of used to adults. They're trained to just think like, oh, I just want to get through this. So I'm just going to nod my head. Sure. He didn't really get what I was trying to say, but sure. So just giving them that out and saying like, hey, did I get that right or not? Gives the student that little open door to say like, no, not really. And that can be really impactful because I've talked to students and they tell me a big long story about what's going on with them, and I completely miss the point of what effect it's having on them, and I focus on something that I care the most about or I think is most important, and lose what they really wanted me to get from it. So that's
Yeah,
pretty
and
much
I
it.
think, especially with younger students, I think when you can reflect on some of those feelings or emotions that they're having, especially when they're starting to learn some of that social emotional vocabulary, like it can really help connect some of those feelings with what they might actually be feeling, whether it's like nervous or angry or sad. Oh, it's sounding like you're a little bit nervous about this situation, and then it helps them associate or connect that nervous vocabulary with that feeling that they might be having. I think it's helpful.
Yeah, that's a really important point because especially, yeah, when students aren't as good as expressing themselves and articulating as they do when they get older, they kind of rely on you to almost kind of construct what's happening. It's kind of like a blur or a tornado,
Mhm.
and they spew it all out at you, and you have to kind of help them sort out like, this is the most important part to me, and this is how I feel about it. Like you can help them kind of construct that.
Yeah.
Yep.